Hello, everyone. My name is Pascal Hansen, and I'm the CEO and financial strategist at Zada. This is Talk Thursdays, and today I have with me Jeff Epstein. And thanks for being with me here, Jeff.
Hi, Pascal. Thank you very much for inviting me.
My pleasure. So tell us a little bit about what you do, and then I'll ask you some questions in there.
You bet. So I started a business recently all about helping small businesses in British Columbia and throughout Canada access what we call non-dilutive funding. So it's basically free money for companies that they can get from a variety of provincial and federal government programs to help them with a range of business objectives they might have. So that's what I do. I help companies find free money.
And why did you get into the grant advising business? What was it about it that compelled you?
That's a great one. So I moved to British Columbia in 1995 from the United States. I'm originally from Montreal, but I spent some time in the US. And when I arrived here, I started dialing into the BC business ecosystem as a way of understanding what makes this province tick. It's a very innovative place. There's lots of investments in technology companies, in natural resources, in clean tech. And it's been fascinating watching these companies grow and evolve over time. When I moved here, I started working with a mid-sized accounting company named Davidson and Company. And I parlayed that into my first real career plan with an internet startup back in the late 90s. And then I also worked for a couple of local manufacturing companies. And all of this was really to get firsthand experience in a variety of industries and business sizes in British Columbia. I spent about 20 years working in business-to-business technology as a product marketer. And that's when I really built up the bulk of my career because I was fascinated by technology, fascinated by the impact it had on business, on society, on people. And the British Columbia technology sector is so vibrant and so creative and so innovative. It was just so much fun to see what people were doing. However, I decided to shift that into a different line of work where I can have a lot more direct impact on the financial underpinnings and financial outlook of these local companies. It was really fun to do marketing. I even did sales for a bit, but I've always been fascinated by the financial side and how companies access working capital, access cash. But the real inspiration at the end of it came from a cousin of mine who's based in Montreal, and he's been doing this non-dilutive funding advisory to Quebec-based businesses for almost a decade now. And I've watched him grow his business. I've seen what he's done in Quebec with companies, such a wide range of companies he's gotten to work with, helping them raise money, helping them access government grants. And I said, hey, that's something that would be super fun to do. And that's when I decided to replicate that business with his help here in British Columbia.
Nice. And so what are the most common types of grant programs available for businesses?
So there are a wide range of grant programs available from both federal and provincial governments, even at the municipal level. The 5 core buckets of grant programs there are include research and development. So that is for hard research, either through academia or through partnerships with other businesses to develop new technologies, new systems, new processes. That's a very big one. Export assistance is another very popular grant program. So that's to help small businesses plan for, market to, and sell to offshore markets, whether it's the United States or across the ocean. Hiring and training is another very big and very active grant program. Both federal government and provincial governments have a lot of money out there to help small businesses attract, hire, and train employees. And I'm talking about training on hard skills like trades, as well as digital and advanced skills like how to become an AI coder, as an example. The next bucket is digital transformation, and that is to help companies upgrade their internal systems and adopt technologies to help them get more efficient and more productive using digital technology. So there's a whole program run by the federal government to help companies find the right technology, mostly software, to help them run their business, and then work with a representative and an advisor to help them make those proposals and help them raise some money to help pay for that those acquisitions as well. The last bucket of grant programs is when we get into industry-specific programs. So these are programs that are run by provincial or federal government levels for specific sectors in the economy. This might include things like the agri-tech and agribusiness vertical, arts and culture, manufacturing, mining and forestry, and there are very specific programs for different verticals, and those come and go based on the economic priorities of the governments in power at the time.
Okay, great. And so do small businesses need someone like you to help them? Why can't they just use Google to find these programs?
Well, that's a great question. The simple answer is no, you don't need someone like me to help. You can do it yourself. But here are two challenges you're going to face. What is out there, spending all that time searching and finding the right program and whether or not you qualify. And then naturally, the time and energy you need to actually pursue the application, to write the grant application, to write up the proposals, to gather all the material, and to do all that. And so if you're going to take time away from your small business to do the first part, which is the research, and then to actually write the grant, you're taking your eye off your day-to-day objectives of actually running and building your business. So that is why companies turn to people like me to help them do it, because we can help out with both those challenges. Some grants, like hiring, for example, need to be handled directly by the employer, and they're pretty straightforward. But others, like export assistance and research and development, are far more complex, a lot more time consuming, and they make it worth your while to bring in an expert like me or others to help you run through that process and understand, how do I optimize my chances of actually getting that grant funding?
Well, I would imagine too, some of them have deadlines. So if you don't have time to do and miss the deadline and have a mistake, then you lose out completely.
Every grant program will have deadlines. All these government agencies run out of money, and depending on how quickly they distribute the funds, and then you have to wait until the next fiscal year for it to restart. So you're absolutely right, Pascal. You can miss a deadline easily. You could underreport on a certain application requirement, and that kind of scuttles your chances of differentiating your application from others, and you're going to miss that funding opportunity. So it's up to people like me to understand what's available, what are the deadlines, and how do I maximize my chance of winning that grant.
So they say, well, we know banks will lend you money if you have money. So is that the same with government grant programs? Do you have to have some sort of assets before you're eligible?
Yeah, it is an unfortunate reality with what we call traditional Canadian lenders like banks and others. They definitely are happy lending money to those who don't need it. Really, it's about risk mitigation, right? They want to make sure their chances of that loan or that grant not going default or not returning on the investment is as little as possible. But it certainly doesn't help the little guys, does it? The government grants are not quite as demanding. Now, most of them, you do need to show that you've been in business for at least a year, and that depends on the program, and that you have some cash available to do what you want without their help. They just want to know that if you're planning a $100,000 marketing budget and you didn't get the grant money, you'd still be able to go through with a big chunk, if not all of that actual program to help your business grow. But the catch is you don't always have to put the money out up front. So some grant programs are based on reimbursement of approved expenses, and others front the money closer to when the program launches or closer into that period. It really depends on what you're looking for, as always. Now, for larger grants that come with more strings attached, there are lots of creative ways of finding the capital to qualify. One example is you can secure a non-binding letter of intent from a lender that proves you have access to cash when you need it. And that goes a long way to satisfying government agencies that you're a lot less risky than others. Now, that's one side of it. The other side is, how do you access the grant funds once you get approved? If you have to wait until you're reimbursed, that could be a year or longer, right? And that's always a challenge. So there are creative ways to get advances on grant funding once you're approved, which will greatly improve your cash flow to fund that project as well. Now, that type of advancing that I'm talking about is private sector. It's not through the government, but there are many places that you can take your approval letter from the government and said, hey, the government said I'm going to get up to $50,000 for this program, and they'll advance you that money for a fee, of course. They'll advance you that money up front to help you pay for that program.
Right. Are there any types of businesses that aren't eligible for grants?
For the most part, Pascal, no. Every type of business is eligible. Grants can be claimed by for-profit companies, not-for-profit institutions, municipalities, associations, all kinds of organizations. And every few years, the government will designate preferred industries, I mentioned earlier, like clean tech or energy or mining, and programs come and go accordingly, but there's always something for everyone. Now, there are more and more programs also that are targeting underrepresented populations, such as, and by the way, not just for businesses, but also for entrepreneurs and even for employees, for hiring and recruiting. So I'm talking about BIPOC, so Black, Indian, persons of color, LGBTQ+, and women. These programs vary in size and they vary in program type and they vary from province to province, but that's an opportunity the government is realizing in order to level the playing field certain parts of our population need more assistance than others to help them grow a business, become an employee, learn a trade, as an example.
Right. So, without giving away any of your trade secrets, what would you say are the keys to a successful grant application?
I'm super happy to share some of my secrets with the audience here. So if you want to be successful, it sounds obvious, but the first thing you need to do is do your homework. So contact the previous grant recipients and ask them how they succeeded. By the way, if it's a federal grant or provincial grant, it's public domain. It's public knowledge who received that funding. So you could find out who won, call them up and say, hey, how did you win? You can even talk to the agency that's supporting that grant program. They will tell you what you need to do to succeed in your grant application. So don't think it's any secret to them. They want to see you succeed, right? So contact the agency, contact previous winners is another example. Now, when you get into writing your application, you want to demonstrate very clear and very measurable alignment with that program's goals and objectives, or the goals and objectives of the overseeing ministry or agency. So for example, if you are doing an export development grant, for the government of Canada, if you're applying for a grant like that, you'll want to show how the results of your project will create jobs, will deliver economic impact, and possibly touch on environmental or social issues as well, such as hiring underrepresented people or developing a business in a rural part of Canada where the resources are fewer and far between. Use the language that these programs use themselves. You want to reflect back and say, this is a program for job development, job creation. My program here will create three jobs in a rural community. That's a big impact, right? And here's the trickle down effect of hiring those people. When you get to your actual application also, the more detailed descriptions you can be of your project, the better. Don't cut corners in your storytelling, and definitely don't cut corners on your financial data, right? You want to be very transparent, very honest. It's okay to ask for less money than you planned because you decided a certain marketing channel wasn't going to succeed. It's way easier to do that than say, oh, I found this new trade show I want to do that I didn't ask you money for. That's a lot harder to do. So be very transparent and honest. And keep in mind that many programs will do a light audit of you. They'll want to see that the money was put to use the way you said, the way that the project's goals and objectives were designed to support. And you'll also potentially have to meet very specific reporting requirements at the end of your project. So you want to keep track of your expenses, your impact, and your performance all along. When you get the check, it doesn't stop there. You have to keep a mindful eye on everything you're doing with that project because the agency is going to ask you about it.
That makes sense. And how do you help businesses that aren't based in BC?
So at the federal level, it's easy. Federal programs span all provinces, and they often don't come with any provincial requirements. So I can help companies and organizations from across Canada with their federal grant applications. Many grant programs are also replicated across provincial borders. So what I mean by that is if the province of British Columbia has a program for agribusiness, chances are high Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Newfoundland, and Labrador have similar programs as well. If you're based in Quebec, I can take you one step further because my partner that I mentioned at the top of this discussion, he's been helping small businesses in Quebec find and secure grant funding for nearly a decade now.
Perfect. So you cover all of Canada. Great.
Yes.
So one more question, which doesn't relate to grants at all, sort of completely left field. If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. I love this question. It's one I've had before. And ever since I was a young child, my answer has stayed the same. It would be Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great built one of the first cross-continental empires the world had ever seen. At one point, it was the largest empire in the world. But more than just the ability to conquer and take over other countries was Alexander the Great's ability to let the countries and kingdoms that he took over maintain their identity, their rituals, their customs, their religion, whatever you might be. So it wasn't an assimilative empire. It was an empire of military and economic strength that also supported all the local traditions and customs and rituals and religions of all the territories under its control. I thought that was a very enlightened way of looking at the world. You have to admire a man who by 33 years old conquered most of the known world. So that would be somebody I'd want to have dinner with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer. I haven't got that before. So if anyone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
You can drop by online to grantsforgrowth.ca, or you can reach me directly at jeff@grantsforgrowth.ca. That's JEFF at grantsforgrowth.ca. One word.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate your time.
It's been wonderful, Pascal. Thank you very much.